Hello and welcome to Angular Air Star Wars episode. This is Jeff Welpley, or Kylo Ren, your host. I'm here today with special guest, Kyle Newman. Say hi,
Hey
Kyle.
everybody, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Also, special guest, Randall Koutnik.
Koutnik.
And our regular panelist, Patrick J.S.
Hey guys.
So, for our new guests, Kyle, why don't you give a quick introduction to yourself?
Well, I'm a lifelong friend of you, Jeff. We grew up in the same town. Played a lot of role-playing games together, comic books, Boy Scouts, soccer. Little New Jersey connection there, going back several decades. Right now I'm a filmmaker living in Los Angeles and direct feature films and music videos. Just did one this year for Taylor Swift and directed some of Taylor Swift's world tour. Had a film come out this year too called Barely Lethal with Samuel L. Jackson and Haley Steinfeld and Jessica Alba and Sophie Turner from Game of Thrones. It's like an action high school comedy. Do a little bit of everything. Yeah, I have a podcast which actually just launched yesterday on Howl.fm2 called The Franchise, where we break down movie franchises. And we started with the greatest franchise of all time, Star Wars. So the whole season's dedicated to Star Wars. It's one episode. We start with the State of the Union, and then each subsequent episode is one film. But we look at the film through the eyes of The Force Awakens. So it's after you see The Force Awakens, it's a good time to tune in and look at how each movie's changed the other one. That's always happened with the saga, but now how is The Force Awakens changing the other six?
That's awesome. Yeah, and I guess the only thing that you didn't mention as well is that your wife, Jaime King, was actually on the Star Wars The Clone Wars as well, right?
Yeah, she was on the Clone Wars. She plays several cool characters. Aurra Sing, the bounty hunter, and she also plays in Season 6 on Netflix. She plays the Force priestesses who train Yoda how to become one with the Force. So she's the one who trained Qui-Gon how to speak from the dead, and she's also the one who trains ultimately Yoda and Obi-Wan how to become Force ghosts. So that's pretty cool, and that's official canon. That was the last George Lucas Star Wars out there, you know?
That's awesome. All right, and Randall, why don't you give a little bit of your background?
So, I am a web developer with a bit of a Star Wars habit. I work at Norse Corporation, and if you go to map.norsecorp.com, you'll see about as close as you can get to Star Wars and still be real life. We do a lot of security stuff, which is, fancy and all that.
That's cool. So I noticed that you have some of the action figures, Star Wars stuff in front of you. You want to give us a rundown of what you have there?
All right, and this is primarily Mike's fault. Mike, who just joined us.
Hello.
This is my fleet for Star Wars Armada, which is not just a thing you can put on your desk and have people give you strange looks over.
Well, you can do that.
Well, I definitely do that. But it's a real fully playable tabletop war game, so you can see on the bases. I don't know how well you can see actual dice you roll and have big fleet battles, and that is really my favorite part of Star Wars, has been space and just giant battles in space. And so it's a lot of fun just being able to every Sunday get together and play with this and duke it out.
Well, so just so I understand, when you say play, you mean like what do you guys? Are you playing a role-playing game, or what are you guys doing with the figures?
It's a fleet battle game where both players basically pick starships, upgrade cards, and squadrons to take basically in a small armada. One player and another bring these two forces together on a 6x3 play space, and depending on who's first or who's second, an objective is picked to change the setup conditions and special scoring conditions, and then they have it out for about 2 hours.
Okay, cool. And Mike, while you're talking, why don't you give an introduction to yourself as well?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm Mike Patak, graphic designer in the Bay Area, Star Wars enthusiast, game player, artist, guy looking for work.
Okay. Cool. So we have a fun show planned for today. We're going to talk a lot about Star Wars. We're not going to talk about any spoilers. One thing I wanted to get started with is something that you started to mention, Kyle, and maybe you want to get into is that confuses, I think, people that are more casual observers is, the canon versus extended universe. Like, what does that even mean? Like, what is canon and what is the...
About a year ago, they blew it all up. So it's a double-edged sword. I mean, there's a lot of books which kept Star Wars alive, most notably Heir to the Empire trilogy, that really jump-started things in the early 90s, and I think gave Lucasfilm an indication that there was a lot more, gas in the engine of the Star Wars machine that George had kind of hopped off of to raise a family. And publishing really kept Star Wars alive, and then games and comics, and then Hasbro, Kenner toys, but it was really the publishing that started this new era that built up towards the special editions and the prequels. And the books were hit or miss. I've read about 90-something% of them, 95% of them, maybe missed some of the young adult stuff. So I've read everything, the good and the bad. And it's something that they inevitably had to do, because when you're bringing on some of the biggest names in entertainment and screenwriters like Lawrence Kasdan, you can't say, hey, now you have to go back and do what R.A. Salvatore did in Vector. You know what I mean? Like, right. You can't do this because this was established, and there's 19 books about Han Solo's daughter and son, and you just can't do that. And also, they weren't unified, and each one was kind of retconned and explaining and making excuses for the other one's existence, and it got very bloated, and so they blew it all up and kept a very clean slate. But what they've done is since then incorporate some of these the highlights, so the hits from the EU into both Rebels. Some stuff from West End Games has trickled into the Rebels show, and we used to play West End Games.
Oh man!
And I'm trying to what else. And some things that were mentioned on screen but never seen end up in Rebels. But things from the books are definitely showing up in other, filmic Star Wars formats. I'm sure there's going to be more so as they move forward into both live-action series and additional animated series and subsequent Clone Wars stuff. Rebel stuff. But there's a new EU, which is about 8 books deep. And I was really hoping that this EU would... well, not even an EU, it's canon. So everything they're putting out now, be it a Marvel comic, be it a book, or a movie, or a TV show, it's canon. And... so they have a unified storyline, or at least they have the opportunity for one, but they're still making a lot of missteps. At one point in this new book, Luke talks about this pop song he heard by this band called Hazel Draslip and the Tootle Fruits, and it's called Darth Vader's Many Prosthetic Parts, and apparently it made Darth Vader so angry that he banished the pop singer to the spice mines of Kessel for slave labor. And Luke is bonded with the daughter, and it's dreadful. It's so dreadful, and this was like an opportunity to really remove the dreadful from canon. The fact that the average citizen knows that Darth Vader is made up of android parts, and it's just ridiculous. So there's some missteps, and I'm hoping they get their stuff together moving forward.
Okay, so they had a couple missteps with some of the stuff that they're putting out there now, and obviously some would argue that the first 3 movies were missteps. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'm curious.
Wrong.
What was that, Kyle?
It would also be wrong.
We'll get to that. I know you have some strong feelings on that. But Randall, I'm curious whether you think that there's anything that they left out of canon that should have been brought in. What do you think?
Yes. Wedge Antilles. He's in both. He kind of gets this like little cameo role in 2 of the major new canon books. But my favorite series by far was the X-Wing books, and it was the exploits of Wedge Antilles and Rogue Squadron. After the movies and what kind of crazy problems they got themselves into and managed to extricate themselves from. And I would like to point out that he's the only one who survived both Death Star runs, and he's not Force sensitive. So the other 2, Keanu Farlander and Luke Skywalker, that survived Death Star 1 were Force sensitive. So we managed to pull that out. And he's such a great character, and we're not even going to get to see him in Force Awakens because Dennis Lawson decided to.
Well, they invited him back. They invited him to Force Awakens. He said he was too busy.
What?
That's the kind of guy you kill in the crawl then. If somebody says they're too busy because they're doing like subpar Scottish theater and they're too busy to come back to the biggest franchise of all time, they put them on the
I
map.
think he didn't want to come back for anything less than, something other than standing around and talking. At least that's what the impression I got.
Well, he could have done what he did in the other films, which was,
Maybe they didn't put him in an X-wing because they didn't want him. They wanted to elevate Poe Dameron. They didn't want him to be, outshone by some veteran from the 30 years ago war. So, if Poe Dameron, I'm saying if Poe Dameron is the star X-wing player, then they can't have him be upstaged by Wedge. So, they probably would have stuck Wedge in the briefing room with Leia, from what we see in the trailers.
Well, there may be some, there's opportunity, you'll see. I've seen the film, I'm not going to spoil anything, but there are classic characters that do more than just stand in the briefing room, So, there's opportunity, they could have done stuff.
Yeah, that's just my thought on why Wedge didn't come back, wasn't interested in coming back.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, though, maybe not that particular character, but maybe some of the other characters that haven't shown up yet that were in some of the books and whatnot may appear in either comic books or something else in the future. So it's not like they're totally banished, right?
Well, Thrawn is a notable admission. Grand Admiral Thrawn from...
He's a great character.
Empire.
Yeah.
And Wedge was in their new, he kind of kicks off the Aftermath book.
Yeah, he's still there.
Yeah,
He's just...
This was another subpar entry into the official canon. When you compare that book to what kickstarted all an Heir of the Empire, the magic and the adventure and the scope of that, and then you compare it to what they've replaced it with, in a sense, Aftermath as the story after Return of the Jedi, it's a little depressing, but at least Wedge is in it for a few scenes.
I felt Aftermath really was pressured for time. Like, I didn't think the story was bad. I didn't think that the characters weren't lifelike enough. I just felt that it could have used, another editing pass or two to kind of tighten everything together, especially the first act. Just the writing seemed rushed. And you're just putting stuff on paper. Yeah.
The sequel's coming out in like 3 months, so they're really rushing this series.
Yeah.
Have to make up for the vacuum left behind by the expanded universe.
Yeah. But, I see Marvel also doing things far too quickly. Feels like in 3 years they're going to burn out every character and storyline. Everybody's already gotten their own series, every major character. They've already got all the heroes on the cover of the comic book all holding lightsabers. You've got like Chewbacca with a lightsaber. They've done everything, and they've only had it like a year. They got to slow down. You know what I mean? That there's no need to accelerate these plot lines and these characters to just burn them out. You got to take a beat and really plot good stories.
Strike while the iron is hot, I guess.
Yeah, but Star Wars Iron's proven to be hot for 38 years, and I don't think it's going anywhere. We're entering the most, rich time for Star Wars. We've got 6 movies in the next 5 years, a theme park opening, Star Wars show on television, a live-action show coming. Disney just dropped $4 billion plus on it. I don't think they're gonna let this thing die down in the next 10 years. So they should be looking at like a 15-year cycle here, and then maybe mothballing it like they always do, and then they've gone away for 4 years and then announcing more.
So what do you guys think about Disney taking over? It was one thing that my brother Jim in particular, and his kids are like the biggest Star Wars fans as well, and he was so angry just at the thought of it, of Disney just ruining Star Wars even more maybe than it has been and that type of thing. Do you think that they've been doing a good job so far? Do you think that it was a good move overall?
Me? Or who?
I kind of think so.
Go ahead.
I think it's a great move.
It's kind of a double-edged thing, right? Because, look at what Star Wars was doing before Disney acquired it. And, they were set to do what? There was a parody show, actually, they were set to do.
Detours.
In the style of, Detours, in the style of Robot Chicken. And that's like the newest Star Wars production, right? Or, more TV shows based on the Clone Wars and the prequels, right? But then Disney comes along, and now there's this new energy that's been pumped into Star Wars, and you got to wonder if that's because of Disney's handling of the whole thing, right? Disney's been handling the Marvel franchise pretty well. So, taking that same approach for the Star Wars universe has given it new life. It's just life under Disney.
Disney is obsessed with branded character. Disney has the best, most iconic branded characters in history, and they've always looked longingly at Star Wars from afar. They've been trying to get involved in Star Wars since the beginning. That's why they did like Star Tours in the park. That's why they pursued other theme park rides. That's why there's Indiana Jones in the parks. When the opportunity came up to buy Star Wars, it was kind of a no-brainer because they already have this affiliation. We're doing Star Wars weekends, and anything they could do to incorporate Disney and Star Wars and get their characters in the lexicon of Disney would be huge. Disney also had proven themselves with both Pixar and Marvel, as you said, Michael, and I think George is also a lifelong Disney fan. He was at Disneyland the day it opened, or the second day it opened. I mean, he's obsessed with Disneyland. So for him, that's like his Star Wars calling and saying, hey, we want to take over your thing. So who's he going to give it to? Fox, who can't even put good special effects into their films? Or is he going to go to Disney, who's the ultimate family brand, who's already proven themselves over all these last 25 years with the theme park presence? And, Disney also, what they did with Rebels, I think they tightened the noose a little too much, but they had great creative people, and they showed them, they proved themselves, and now they're getting a little more freedom. And I think after this film, they'll give Lucasfilm a lot more freedom to say, okay, we just want to watch your back on this one, but now it's going to be a success and fans like it, and hopefully, it'll give Lucasfilm the freedom to just go make the best movies and not worry about chasing the marketplace, that's why this film is so critical, because if it isn't received well, if it doesn't do well, that means Disney could suddenly turn it into, how they manufacture Divergence and those type of other franchises.
I hope not. That would be a worst case scenario for me. I do not like that. So I mean,
they're not.
Force Awakens is already a success when you look at the pre-orders just alone.
That's what I mean. They're not. And that's what's great. So they're going to be a company they're going to do what they did with Marvel, which is let guys like Kevin Feige steer the ship and let them plot it out and let them hire their people and let them manage the projects, and they're going to distribute.
And we know Joss Whedon is doing the Avengers, and so he's already working with Disney on these big budget projects. So it would be nice. We're going to get Wash back as a pilot in Rogue One, and I would like to see Whedon's take on Star Wars.
I do think that you mentioned Rebels. I mean, I do think that the second season of Rebels is better, in my opinion, than the first season. If you haven't checked it out yet, you definitely should. It's a pretty good series. Now I want to get into the prequels. So this is kind of I've been watching a ton of stuff on YouTube of just fan-made stuff, and one of the big things out there, if you guys haven't seen it, is there's a number of people that have done this thing of what the prequels should have been. They redid the entire movie or changed a bunch of stuff the way they felt that the movie should have gone. So I feel like there is this a majority of people that don't think that George did a good job with the prequels. I know, Kyle, I want to leave you to the end for this. I want to get Randall and Mike's first because I know you have a lot of strong opinions. So Randall, what are your thoughts on the prequels?
I think that they tried to make Star Wars something that wasn't Star Wars. I am a lover of all things science fiction, save tween-age dystopia, and so I like all that. And in my mind, what science fiction does is ask a question about the future. What's going to happen in the future? And sometimes those are really hard questions to ask. You look at 2001: A Space Odyssey. What happens if computers can make decisions on their own that might endanger human life? What happens? In Star Wars, the question is, what if we had giant spaceships and laser swords and explosions and space fighters? And the answer is, it would be awesome. And to me, that's what Star Wars is about. And the prequels had some of that. And you watch the fan edits, like you're talking about, they cut out all this extra stuff that Lucas threw in. That just kind of was like the lead rods you put into a nuclear reactor to slow down the reaction. It's not fun anymore. You still have all the parts to make it fun, but they just kind of missed that fun. That's something Marvel and Disney does very well. They managed this. It's superhero. It's fun. I want to watch it because it's fun and I enjoy it, not because watching the worst love scene ever.
Mike, what do you think about the prequels?
Well, I've always approached Star Wars as as escapist entertainment, right? I'm a big sci-fi nerd, but I watch science fiction to get into the story and the adventure and stuff, right? So in a way, the prequels kind of put a break on the action that you're used to out of a Star Wars title. There was something I read a while ago about it was George Lucas and I think one of the other producers behind Star Wars, and they had a difference of opinion of what made Star Wars great. Lucas was all for the special effects, and the other producer was more for the story. I'm sorry, I forget his name. But as we know, Lucas went on to make the prequels, and that had more of a special effects focus and not so great on the story. And that's where ultimately what happened, right? Fans didn't like the they didn't come for the special effects. They also came for the story, which kind of fell flat. Otherwise, in terms of how I rank the sequels, they're obviously not my favorite. I grew up with the original trilogy, so that's more what I'm after. But I don't think Episode 1 is as bad as the other two, I think. And that might be because Liam Neeson was kind of carrying it. And
Ewan McGregor, so it was at least those parts were.
Yeah, but I think Hayden Christensen's acting was what really killed 2 and 3, and the whole focus on these shadowy politics, which isn't really what you get into Star Wars for. You get into Star Wars for the Force, lightsabers, good versus evil, stormtroopers missing, and giant space battles and stuff. You don't get into it for these convoluted shadowy politics that happened in the prequels, especially with 2 and 3. So
okay. Now, Kyle, why should I not hate the prequels?
Well, there's a lot of things with the prequels. There's context. You have a 16-year gap, and everyone had all this time to imagine what they thought the movies would be, and so that expectation, everyone's own version is always going to be better than what the man who created it and spent his own money on the greatest independent film saga of all time. We're going to tell him what's Star Wars and what's not. It's mildly arrogant. I also think it's self-centered for us to all assume that Star Wars are going to grow up with us. Matrix came out that summer, and everyone was like, "Oh, why can't he do moves like Neo?" It's like, you can also shut up, because that's not Star Wars. Star Wars is objective myth. I mean, he's not telling it with a lot of POVs and handheld cameras. It's a certain storytelling style that we wanted it to age with. Our maturity as an audience. Star Wars got us into movies, and suddenly we were cooler than Star Wars and how we judged it. That said, there's flaws with the prequels for sure. I mean, you could give me 2 days, and I could cut out 5 minutes out of each of those films and probably jump them 20% up on the Rotten Tomatoes meter. It's really simple fixes, but those are the things that made it personal to George, and he's the main guy. He's the storyteller. It came out of his head. If you read Star Wars: A New Hope, the novelization, the prologue, it's a paragraph long. It's about politics. It's about how the Republic and its politicians, it all decayed from within. And they mentioned the Journal of the Wills, and it is about politics. It's just he chose to tell Episode 4, 5, and 6, which were the revolutionary part of the story, when it was at the galaxy was at its most dire time, and it was the simplest, most cost-effective story, and then go backwards and tell the backstory. So there's room for all of it. So I don't think Star Wars has to be put into that narrow spectrum where it can't have politics. But I do agree that that's one of those things that alienated people. I do think Star Wars, though, mythologically, you can't deny the prequels, because what it did was enhance the saga. You have this virgin birth, this balance of the Force prophecy. It gives the original trilogy another context to look at it through, that they're not necessarily Darth Vader's films, because he's not starring in them, but they're Darth Vader's story, and you can't help but look at those movies again in a different way. And I think each Star Wars film modified the ones that came before it. Like when you find out that Darth Vader, spoiler alert, is Luke's father, you go back and look at A New Hope differently. Like, Obi-Wan lied to us? Obi-Wan, you bastard! And you look at it differently. And then when you find out Leia is the sister in Return of the Jedi, you go back and you look at A New Hope and Empire differently. And now when you go watch the prequels, you're going to go look at the original trilogy differently. You're going to go, wait a second, Vader, Return of the Jedi suddenly becomes the boldest film of all time, I think, because he took the greatest cinematic villain and humanized him by the end of that movie, and then he said, We already had the greatest villain of all time. Now I'm going to make somebody even scarier and more nefarious and malicious. And he creates the Emperor. Do you think you think Disney would let him go make that movie now? You think they'd say, you're not getting rid of our greatest villain of all time? So
This is a franchise.
these are the things that, the benefit of these being made independently. So the negatives of the prequels and Return of the Jedi, which people malign, I think are also the things that they give us these great original things. And I don't know going forward if 7, 8, and 9 are going to be as original. George was going back in time, and he's a very clean storyteller, and he was pulling things right out of Japanese samurai films, classic Arthurian legend, space opera serials like Buck Rogers and Flash Gordon, and pulpy influences and westerns and Lawrence of Arabia. And just looking at the trailers and stuff, they're great for Force Awakens, but it looks like the only thing they're pulling from is old Star Wars movies. And George in the prequels was still pulling from more than that. So no matter what you say about them, they're still technologically innovative films. Every movie, he didn't say, I'm just going to play it safe and make my money. He pushed the boundaries of storytelling. And everyone says, the Phantom Menace is all digital. Well, that was a selling point. The Phantom Menace has more practical model effects in it than any film in history times 3. They sold it to us as digital effects because that was cool in 1999. And I bet when you go see The Force Awakens, you're going to realize that there are more digital effects in The Force Awakens than in any Star Wars movie ever. There's more CGI in that film than any Star Wars movie you've ever seen. They're selling it to you as there's more practical effects. So what they are versus what they're selling them to you as are two different things. But I understand why people do not enjoy the prequels as much, but I think you cannot deny them on the Star Wars myth. If you want to read the best Star Wars story ever, it's Revenge of the Sith novelization is fantastic. They have the time to really explore Anakin's fall to the dark side and how the Jedi and the Sith are pulling him in two different directions, and it's fantastic.
Hayden Christensen.
And you don't have to look at Hayden Christensen if you don't like him. It's just a Star Wars story. Get the audiobook. It's read really, really well, performed well. It's like 13 hours. It's the awesomest Star Wars story. So look at the prequel in a different way.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up The Matrix because I completely agree that when everyone was expecting more Star Wars and episode 1 to come out, and then we also got The Matrix, which I loved when I was young. Just this fantastic, again, and it was everything that Star Wars was. It was, some relatively unknown director coming out with a mishmash of everything, mishmash of everything that they really liked when they were young, and put it together into this movie with special effects that of a level we hadn't seen before.
Absolutely.
And it's funny watching The Matrix again later on, and it really didn't age well, especially the special effects. Because when I look at special effects now, and CGI back in 1999 was, let's admit it, pretty crummy compared to what we can put together now.
Phantom Menace holds up very well in terms of visual effects.
Yeah.
I mean,
and what I was going to go into is actually Phantom Menace aged relatively well. I can go back and watch it again, and I'm not like, oh man, you can practically see the pixel blur there.
Yeah. I think Attack of the Clones is probably the weakest of the 7 films. I think Phantom Menace might be my favorite of the prequels. I've seen it 100 times. It holds up really well. I think people that go back and watch them, a lot of people watch them as they came out and then dismiss them. But if you go back and watch them, in the way there's so many parallels, visual parallels, narrative, mythic parallels between what Luke goes through, what Anakin goes through in the exact same moment. There's so many fascinating things too. Like in the prequels, the Sith always tell the truth. They tell the truth the whole time. In the original trilogy, the Jedi lie to get everything done. They tell Luke, your father's dead. They tell him he's got to go kill his father. That's the only way. Ultimately, Luke doesn't listen to Obi-Wan or Yoda. They were both wrong. But the Sith just tell the truth. I mean, I think there's these fascinating parallels. The way that there's 2 Sith, and then it ends up with there's 2 Jedi in the interim, between 3 and 4, tasked with waiting it out, just like the Sith waited it out for their opportunity to come back. They're very well plotted movies, but maybe I would have maybe cast Anakin to be 14 and stuck with the same actor through all 3 films, as opposed to going with a 9-year-old and doing that. I don't think the age difference between Natalie Portman and Jake Lloyd, it didn't help the story in any way to make them like 6 years apart or whatever. Yeah. So there's superficial things that I think I'm like, why did he do that? I don't like
So,
the
more
voice
Lucas's
of certain characters.
direct. Sorry. More Lucas's directing was, I guess, what turned people off to the prequels rather than the writing and the story. Would you say?
I do think it's a combination of both. I think when you're making a movie and you have no one to say no to you or to no one to really question you, I think it's healthy in filmmaking to be challenged to make sure every decision is what it is rather than just saying you like it. You have to think of the audience, and he might not have had that barometer and that challenging point on the prequels. Because you easily could have cut 3 or 4 minutes out of those films and made them exponentially better. There's just little things, and I didn't get to watch them yet, but I've heard there's some good buzz about. They're called the cheese edits. Have you heard about this?
No.
Some guy cut out. He didn't savage the movies, but he turned Jar Jar into a subtitled creature, and the Nemoidians speak another language, and they're subtitled. And suddenly you feel differently about all this stuff. Ultimately, though, it's John Williams' music and the sound design by Ben Burt and Matthew Wood that really are the spine of these, emotional spine of these films. So even if you don't like the Star Wars movie, there's still something amazing out of it. Like, I love those soundtracks.
Oh, yeah.
I may even like those soundtracks better than The Force Awakens. You know what I mean? It's like there's something iconic about some of those tracks in those films, like Duel of the Fates, and you got wonderful lightsaber battles and great space battles, and there's still some fantastic scenes in those films, even if you don't love the films.
Actually, you mentioned Jar Jar. I was going to say that I'm a huge Star Wars fantasy fan in general, just like any fantasy books, like comic book movies, anything like that. Even when it's a bad comic book movie, I usually still like it. The one and only thing I get bothered by in any of the Star Wars films is Jar Jar, and not just in the Phantom Menace, also in the I love the Clone Wars TV show, and actually, the Clone Wars were so great. Like, so many episodes were really, really good. But then you have, like, this random Jar Jar episode in the middle where he's, like, bumbling around and, like, knocking over, like, Star Troopers. It's, like, totally out of character of the theme or, like, the feel of the series. I don't know. What do you guys think that... Is there anyone, I guess, that here that actually doesn't mind Jar Jar as much?
Well, between Jar Jar and Hayden Christensen's acting, I'd take direction, I suppose. I take Jar Jar, actually.
Okay.
If it comes down to having to watch either like the Anakin's dialogue in 2 or Jar Jar's antics in 1, I think I would rather take Jar Jar's antics in 1. He's a gag character, but he he fell flat. Well, fell the wrong direction rather, and they downplayed his character as they went along. So
Mike, what do you think about the fact that, and this is, I said no spoilers. I don't know whether this is a spoiler or not. I guess, but it's kind of well known that Hayden Christensen, that they are, I guess, trying to get him in Episode 2, like maybe flashbacks or who knows what or whatever. What do you think about the fact that he may actually be back?
Well, what helps is Lucas isn't directing this time around. It's Abrams. And I think a large. I'm sure I'm saying Hayden Christensen's acting, but it's also the way he's directed as well. And I want to believe that under another director, Hayden Christensen could be directed to not be as bad as he was in the prequels, I guess. So if he does come back, I'm not going to say that the movie's terrible because Hayden Christensen's returned. I'm willing to keep an open mind and just think that maybe he's going to be directed better and maybe given better dialogue too. I don't know.
Yeah, he won't be carrying the film. Here's the deal. It's essential that Hayden Christensen, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Yoda come back as spirits at some point. Last time we saw them was the end of Return of the Jedi. The last 6 films were sold to us as the Anakin Skywalker's rise and fall and redemption. It's the third act of Anakin's life. It's his opportunity to be a grandfather and the father he really wasn't. He doesn't have to be in it for more than a scene, just like Obi-Wan was in, say, Empire Strikes Back, or Yoda comes in briefly, in Return of the Jedi again. You could also have him sharing scenes with those 3, like a spirit council. But to deny him being in the movie because we didn't like him under George's direction when it is his story. I mean, it's a Skywalker story. If it's got a Roman numeral, it better have the Skywalkers. And this, as George said recently, to understand Star Wars is to know that it's a soap opera family drama. So you have to have Grandpa Anakin back. You know, you have to have whoever it is. You got to have Luke's in there. You got to have him imbuing some knowledge onto another generation. Like, he has to be present, even if it's for one scene, even if he's at odds with them, or even if it's Yoda doing most of the talking and he's standing there. He still has to have some presence in the direction this next trilogy.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw in the teaser trailers, you know, the big thing was like finishing what you started. And then the melted Darth Vader mask and Kylo Ren going through there.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not like, one of my worries early on was that they were going to dump everything, and they dumped most of the expanded universe. But the idea was just going to be, all right, everyone gets to look at all your favorite heroes from before, and now we have the new Disney-branded heroes, and we're just going to focus on them from here on out. And that was a big worry of mine, because the one thing I didn't like about the second teaser trailer was there's new X-Wings. I'm a purist. I love the X-Wing. They've got this new model, and I will be a stickler nerd about that one. I suppose, 30 years they have to advance on something. But man, X-Wings. So I'm glad that like as time went on, we got closer and closer to the movie to see that it wasn't just we're going to look at all our old heroes briefly and then move on. And so you're absolutely right that to bring in, kind of connect the whole, I guess, 9 movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We're getting near the end of our time, so I want to start to wrap up. Just a quick announcement that next week we are going to have on Tuesday now I'm like off here a little bit. We're going to have another Angular Air with Harry Lerner talking about his NG Book 2 and his Angular productivity tips. So let's get into the picks, and let's start off with my man Patrick JS.
Oh yeah, so my pick would be Halo 2 Beta that's released again. Yeah, and of course Star Wars series.
Cool. Randall.
My pick is, you can get them at craft stores everywhere, adhesive Wiggly Eyes. And so there's just this nice flat plastic. I'm going to see if I can get this open on camera. A nice flat plastic thing, and they've got self-adhesive, so you don't need any glue or anything like that. This long sheet of Wiggly Eyes, and the advantage of that is you can keep them in your backpack, and then anytime you need to make something funny or humorous, you can then attach Wiggly Eyes to it, and all of a sudden you have the silliest blockade runner of all time. Or a most depressed Imperial Star Destroyer.
Nice.
One way you can tell his stuff apart from everyone else's.
So and of course, with the addition of pipe cleaners, things get even better.
Nice, man.
That's
nice,
my
man.
pick.
Okay. Michael. Do you have any picks for us today?
Kind of put on the spot here.
Well, you can promote yourself, because I think you're looking for a job, right?
Oh, yes. www.pilotillustration.com is my portfolio. I got training as a digital artist, and I love drawing sci-fi robots and stuff, so I got a small gallery of that up there. Also, any Homeworld fans out there, I am actually the guy responsible for the map of the Homeworld universe. Put in the time, the effort, and stuff, and wanted to make a map out of it. So that is also up there as well, along with some concept and development maps that I worked on while I was making the Homeworld map. So, yep, pilotillustration.com, and I'm Norsound.
Great. Thanks, Mike. For my picks, I have 2. The first one being Kyle's movie Fanboys. If you guys haven't seen that, you definitely should check it out. I love the movie. It's about a bunch of Star Wars fans that wanted to see Episode 1 before it came out, and they raided George Lucas's campus to try to get an early preview. It's really funny. A lot of actors that you will recognize, and really funny guys. And the other one is one thing that was interesting. As I was kind of preparing for this, I was thinking about all sorts of stuff, but I remembered one thing that I had forgotten for a long time. Kyle, I don't know if you remember this, but back in the days when we were doing role-playing games, at one point you and I talked about doing a comic book, like a superhero comic book type, Star Wars themed thing. And I had actually written out like 5 issues or so, did like the initial writing, and you were a great artist, back then. I don't know if you still draw and that type of thing. And so we were gonna set it up so that you draw it, and then we were gonna publish it and make $1 million and live the high life. But that didn't go anywhere. But I still have those drawings from that, when I initially wrote those out. So I'm gonna once I go back for Christmas to my mom's place, I'm gonna get those from the basement, and I'll post those somewhere.
Show them to me first.
Will do. All right, Kyle.
I remember those. That was fun. How's this work? What am I picking?
Well, you just promote. You can promote anything or just anything that you're interested in. What are you working on?
Okay, I mentioned earlier I got this new podcast called The Franchise, and this whole season's just talking about Star Wars. If you like this type of Star Wars chat, you're probably going to like coming to that. Topher Grace and my wife are on it, and also Ralph McQuarrie's understudy, Paul Bateman, who's a great graphic and art director, concept artist, and Jimmy Mack from Rebel Force Radio. There's a lot of great people on it this week. It's fun. My film Barely Lethal is out, and I know you mentioned Fanboys. Thank you for promoting that.
One question about Fanboys, though.
Yeah.
There's a deleted scene where they get to the security guard. The security guard has 6 fingers on his right hand, and it's this brief, 45-second Princess Bride reference. That was the funniest part of the movie, and you deleted it. Why?
I didn't want to delete it. They were like, oh, we just got to get them in there, and they made me delete it. It was my favorite. I also love when they all sing the Ewok song. That's a deleted scene, I think. Is that in there? On the deleted scenes, or did we not approve
I
it?
remember.
They all sing, Yub Nub.
Yeah, that was a good part, too.
But I think we couldn't get the rights to the publishing for Yub Nub, so we couldn't put it in the main film. And, here's my wife.
Hi, Jamie. How's it going?
Good, how are you? How are you guys?
Good, good.
Whoa, there's a nice selection of fine-looking men here.
Bunch of dorks.
My favorite kind of men.
So, Jamie, let me ask you a question while you're here. I know you obviously realized that Kyle loved Star Wars when you met him, but did you understand the full depth of his geekiness?
Of course. Of course, that's why I love him.
She's a Harry Potter fan.
Oh, okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
I love Star Wars. My mom saw Star Wars over and over and over again in the theater. She was obsessed with Star Wars. So I grew up with Star Wars. And I love anything that has to do with the imagination, anything that has to do with some,
Star Wars is a good spiritual core.
And that's really important for me. There's something about Star Wars that is truly untouchable. That it's just really powerful.
Look, 38 years later, we're still here. Star Wars is the biggest thing in the world. You think Hunger Games, we're going to be talking about Hunger Games in 38 years? They're going to be opening a new park 38 years from now? Annie Hall.
I hope not. That'd be a terrible theme for us.
What was the Annie Hall celebration? You know what I mean? Nobody cares. Star Wars ultimately changed the way movies were made, merchandised, distributed, and talked about. And
being a part about it, being a part of it in any way, shape, or form is such an honor. Doing Clone Wars and doing all of those different voices, especially closing out all of Clone Wars with playing the Force Priestesses was so bittersweet. Playing George's last real, Star Wars, and I thought I had this feeling like it was the end then, and then seeing the film the other night at the premiere, and being at the premiere, all of a sudden it was oh my God, there was new breath, new life again. You know what I mean? Because there was this deep sadness that it was gonna go away, and even though we knew that there were gonna be more films, no one knew what that was gonna look like. But then to find out that it was one of our best friends involved in making it, and JJ making it, it was really, that's when it got really exciting, because we're okay, now all of our children will be able to grow up with this legacy, and it's really exciting.
That's awesome. Was there anything interesting that happened at the premiere that you guys went to the other night?
No spoilers.
It was great. George was there. It was nice to see George.
He's wearing jeans.
Talking. Yeah.
Jeans and a sweater, and He was very chill for this premiere.
I got smashed between John Boyega and Steven Spielberg on the carpet. Let me tell you, that was intense. Oh my god.
I got to meet John Williams. That was.
Oh yeah,
Frank Oz.
I forced him to ask to get a picture with him.
Okay, that's.
I was like, can you please? I was literally using they call it a handler, a person that helps you with PR. They bring you down because you get mobbed by the press, and so I was just basically using her to get us selfies with every single person we want to selfie. I was like, maybe we could like talk to John Williams because we'd really love a picture with him. And Charles was like, no, he doesn't want that. And then I was like, get John Williams right now!
No, it was cool. I mean, everybody was at the premiere. Everybody. It was like
sitting behind us was like Matthew McConaughey
he was like,
and
why
his
am I doing that
kids.
Star Wars premiere? He was
and then Jason Bateman. It was just like every Star Wars lover was there, and there were three different theaters, and I was like, oh, I hope we don't get stuck like in the Lane Theater. And then I look like to my back behind me, and there's Matthew, and then there's
Jon Favreau.
Jon Favreau is in front, and then it's just like I'm like, oh my god, this is how many people
it's just like everybody
love Star Wars.
Came out to see Star Wars. It was like everybody was there. I mean,
it felt almost like a family. It almost felt like a family screening. Believe it or not, as big as it was, there was a feeling about it that made me feel like when I was there, I was staying with my family, because anyone that loves Star Wars the way that we love Star Wars is our family. And that's like a bond that you just can't break, because that's what Star Wars has done to us, what it's done for us. It's united us. It's allowed us to speak the same language and live a certain kind of lifestyle of understanding, and you could call it geek, you could call it whatever, but I don't really think it's anything but understanding what great entertainment is, and also like really understanding what it means to be a part of a franchise and a group of people that really love and respect storytelling. And to me, that's a really cool thing to be a part of.
That's awesome. I thought it was funny that J.J. Abrams was on, I forgot which talk show it was, one of the late night talk shows, and he mentioned what the type of pressure he was under, because everybody who talks to him is kind of like, not so subtly saying, okay, this is great that you're doing this. Don't mess this up. Like this is our thing. Okay, you know not to mess this up.
Yeah.
So,
he knew that. He knew that going in, but he was well prepared. He was smart. He did his reconnaissance.
Yeah, they also
we were part of the reconnaissance.
They also really great people, like bringing back Lawrence Kasdan to write it, who wrote Empire and Jedi and even Raiders. I mean, they just brought great people into the mix, and they have all the special effects guys doing this film. They have obviously John Williams back. They have all the sound designers
Matthew
back.
Wood and all of these guys that worked on the last three films.
And they worked on special editions.
And Clone Wars and Rebels. Do you know what I mean?
They live and breathe Star Wars. So it's all the same people making it,
And it was really exciting to see that part, like the real honoring of it. And it was almost like, I think that it's the one time that a director of that stature is saying, getting the word "don't F it up." You know what I mean? I remember when I did Pearl Harbor with Michael Bay, I said, "Hey, do you have any direction for me?" He said, "Yeah, don't F it up." And I was like, because at that time it was the biggest movie ever made, And it's so interesting to see that JJ was under that kind of pressure, but you can tell when you meet this guy that he's the kind of guy that only knows how to work under that kind of pressure, and he thrives in it and flourishes in it. And I remember kind of like talking about like who else we thought would be great for it. We thought maybe like, David Yates or like even like Alfonso Cuarón. You know what I mean? Like there's certain directors that would have been amazing and really kept the integrity of the film, but I thought JJ just killed it, and the casting was so amazing.
Like outside of JJ, I would only say David Yates, because he did great work on Harry Potter without making it about himself and his style. He just told a story, where some of these other filmmakers really have to like put too much of their style in it. Zack Snyder, even Chris Nolan, great filmmaker guys, but it'd be not Star Wars, it'd be one of their films.
And you would know because of their composition and the way that they shoot it and the way that they carry it. And
it has to be too cerebral, or it has to, like Guillermo would do with weird monsters with eyeballs on their hand. You know what I mean? Only one way.
Guillermo would take one of the side movies and just do a movie about Star Wars monsters. That'd be fantastic, but not for 7.
But Kyle, how come you turned it down? Well, great. Listen, guys. I don't want to keep you. I really appreciate you coming on, Kyle. It's been awesome. I could actually talk to you for another like 2 hours about Star Wars, and I'm probably going to leave here and go to stand in line to watch it. So thank you very much.
We have our like 90 tickets.
Oh yeah.
Love you guys.
Nice. All right. See you later, guys. Everyone, have a good one.
Force be with you.
Bye.
Indeed.
Bye.